let's see. I'm having a hard time animating a 20 seconds standing still idle. Oh boy, that's going to be tough. 20 seconds of moving holds. Do you have any recommendations, tutorials, documentations to understand it a bit better? I've done a few demos on moving holds on this channel. You could do a search for those. That might help. Moving holds are very tricky, but if you kind of understand the little trick to them, which is essentially how you adjust the curves in the graph editor, you can make very subtle motions that feel much more alive and don't just feel swimmy and floaty and kind of repetitive. So I've got a few videos on that on this channel here. The other thing is do some master studies. That would be the big thing I would do. Like I'm assuming this is for a video game. If you're having a character stand still and idle, look at video games that have a similar style of what you want to animate. So if it's like a Street Fighter idle, look at Street Fighter. If it's more of a cartoony thing like Jak and Daxter, Sly Cooper, I'm naming very old games here. You could go with those, or Crash Bandicoot, like the new Crash Bandicoot, Super Mario Odyssey, again, still old games. But you could look at something in the same style and see how they handle it. How do they keep the character alive in a way that doesn't feel repetitive, but also doesn't just feel like they're dead on screen? So those would be the two main things I would do, because honestly, there's no kind of global answer to this, because it really just depends on the style. Like a fighting game, you're going to have more of that bounce in there. So it's going to be a 20-second standing still idle, but there's going to be a lot of motion in there. Whereas if you look at an idle from Uncharted or like a more realistic game, the character could just be standing there and just essentially it's just a breath cycle in there with some small twitches in there. Some small, I'm blanking on the actual term that they use. It's not twitch, it's not accent. Oh, I'm blanking. That's going to bother me now. But it's essentially, there's a term for when you have a cycle and then you add these little like head turns or maybe like a scratch. I almost had the name. A scratch of the chin, something like that to break up the idle animation. So if there's anything specific on there you have, especially if you're aiming for a very specific type of animation, let me know. Let's see. I'm trying to animate a forward jump where the character does a spin around his forward momentum axis. So his forward momentum axis, he does a spin. Okay. Around his forward, so his forward momentum axis is going this way. That means he's spinning this way. So he's doing a barrel roll, I'm assuming. It should look, okay, like a horizontal tornado. Okay, yeah, doing this. How would you approach this? Do I use the cog rotate Z, or is there some other way to do it? It depends on the rig, and it depends on the orientation of the character. So if they're diving like this is their head, and they're doing this, I would probably use the cog, because it's a full body angle change. And that's going to make it a lot easier right through there. The problem is, if you're doing that, you might start to get some gimbal lock, and as they're spinning or jumping, they're going to be doing this in the air, which that's going to be annoying. So you have a few choices. If your rig has it, you can use a gimbal cog in there, and actually I'll show this here. So let me quickly, because I had things prepped here for the demo, so I'm going to just quickly create a new scene. Let's reference in character, and then I'll share my screen. Don't want to give away the demo too soon. Everyone knows I'm doing a vanilla walk. I don't know what I'm scared of giving away. Okay. So let's say we have a character diving forward. They're maybe going through a window and they're doing that barrel roll. So they're going to be spinning in this axis. There's a few things that I would do depending on how intense the shot is. The first is, as the character jumps, you'll notice that right now the arms and the head on this character don't follow the body, which means that as he spins, we're going to get this. The legs don't follow. It's going to be a pain. So the arms, these are in FK already. I would take these and make sure that the follow line or the orientation, there's different names for this, is set to follow the body like that. I would do the same thing for the head, like so. Now I can just pose these into a nice quick pose in here. We're just going to have him like bullet right through. Maybe he's going to bring his shoulders down a little bit there, like so. And now as his body spins, we just get that. Cool. Now for the legs, on most studio quality rigs, you'll have two choices. You can either set the legs to FK, so that they'll work just like the arms, or you could take the IK controls and set these to follow the, in this case, cog. I'll do that with the knee controls as well, like that. And now everything spins together right through there. So now I can have this character go through whee, and spin through the air. Great. That works well. Except, what if he's going at a slight angle? Now, as I rotate him forward here, we might have, you can see in the graph editor here, a whole bunch of extra rotations going on as he's spinning in the air. And that could be really annoying to try and clean up because you're going on a slight angle. You're not perfectly perpendicular. So how do we avoid that? Well, this is where I would try to think of what axis is the most important. And again, there's a few different ways you can do this. The most basic is using a gimbal control. So on this character here, I can turn on the gimbal cog, and now I've got two cogs. I would use one of these to spin the character around, just like this. And then the other one would angle the character. So like that. Now the character can whee. And the gimbal cog here is only rotating in Y the whole time. So I can get this perfect spin as the character goes through the air. Done. That will make it much easier, and I'm not going to get this weird wiggle to his spin. So this is how you would normally use a gimbal control. That's what they're made for, is to avoid this kind of situation. But what if your rig doesn't have one? Well, you can quickly create your own gimbal situation. And for this, it's really just doing a constraint. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create, in this case, if I'm going to control his hips, I would create my own controls here. So let's create a new curve here. So I want to create NURBS primitives circle. I'm going to place this right where the cog is. And this is, again, if your character doesn't have a gimbal control. So I'm going to place this here. And from there, I'm going to, oh, dang it. I just saw someone's posting links and the links aren't working. Dang it. I need to double check what Twitch changed. So I wonder if I can just allow the links. Can I? No, dang it. I can't. So again, create a control, place it here. Now I'm going to call this one new cog. There we go. Now, once it's in place, I'm going to go to modify freeze transformations. So it's all zeroed out. Then I'm going to duplicate this. There we go. Shrink it down. And this is going to be new cog offset. Like so. Now, the setup is pretty simple. I'm going to take new cog offset, parent it under new cog, like that. So I did it in the outliner here, but you can also do it by selecting the parent, or sorry, the child. So that would be cog offset. Then the parent, the one that's going to lead the action, there. Then go to edit parent. So you could do that. Now, with this in place, I'm just going to constrain the regular cog. Let's double check. Oops, I forgot. I need to freeze your transformations here. Always freeze your transformations before doing any rigging. I told myself not to forget and I forgot. So freeze your transformations here before doing anything. Okay, now I'm going to parent that and then constrain the cog to my new controls, specifically to the offset. So with constraining, you select the object that leads, then the object that follows. So cog offset, his cog constrain parent, like so. And essentially what I've done is I've just given myself a new control. It does the same thing, like moving this or moving this, exact same thing. They're no different. So now I've essentially created the same setup I had before, where I have one control that I can just spin in one axis like that, as the other one goes through the air. So there we go. And perfect spin this way. Done. So you can do it that way. The other way you can do it, and this is trickier if you're not if you don't understand how it works. I've done a bunch of videos on this, so I'm not going to go super in depth. Is you can change the rotation order of the control. So rotation order is very simply when you have three axes, X, Y, and Z, and they have to work together in a gimbal setup. That's when you have three axes that move together. The rotation order is the way that the rotations are calculated in the back end. And this is very important because those rotations will determine what axis is going to create gimbal lock. So in this case, if I select this control and go to the attribute editor, right here under my control node there, here's my rotation order, X, Z, Y. So the way you can see this more easily is if you switch your rotation to gimbal mode, you're going to see how the rotations work. So you kind of go from left to right. So the rotate X right there, you'll see that it affects the rotate X and everything to the left of it, which is nothing. It's the first letter here, X. If I rotate X, nothing else in the rotations are changing. Z, if I move Z, you'll notice that it's affecting itself because it's rotating, but it's also affecting the X-axis. You'll see that the X-axis is moving here. And the middle one is what's going to give you gimbal lock, because as soon as I do this, gimbal lock, yay. And then you have your rotate Y, which if I move this, everything moves. So it's affecting Y and everything else. So with that in mind, how does this help us? Well, if we know the rotations that we're going to need in our scene, we can use this to make it a little easier to work with. So for example, if I rotate the character forward here, because X is first and I need him to tilt forward, you'll notice that my rotate Y axis is now not lined up with his body anymore. Well, that's not great. I want that rotate Y to line up with the body. So what I would want to do is switch this. X shouldn't be first. X should affect everything else and move the entire manipulator with it. So I want X to be the last letter here. Now the center letter is, like I said earlier, the one that's going to create gimbal lock. It's going to be the one that if I move this, gimbal lock. Well, okay. Imagine you're rotating in Y. That's the axis we need to spin the character on. If that's spinning in circles, that's going to go into gimbal lock, out of gimbal lock, into gimbal lock, out of gimbal lock, over and over and over and over again. It's going to be a nightmare. So because it's such an active axis, we don't want that to be in the middle axis. So it's got to be number one. So ideally, if I am thinking of this correctly, we should have a YZX rotation order. I hope all of that made sense. So I'll open this up, YZX. Okay, so let's see if this works. If I tilt the character forward, whoop, the whole manipulator moves with it. Yay. If I rotate in Y, whoop, there you go. The character is just spinning in that direction. If I rotate in Z, that y-axis still sticks right with the character. So now I can essentially do the exact same thing that I did, move him forward, but you'll notice that I never get a moment where that y-axis is now affecting 3 different axes. It's only affecting the one. So right there, I can rotate this character however I want, and I still get that perfect Y spin. Now, does this mean, hey, it's perfect, it's going to be great, no problems? No. You might have some gimbal lock in different ways depending on what he's doing. But for a quick just jump, that could be a nice simple solution, and you can animate that and then switch back to the regular rotation order after the jump. So I hope all of that made sense. I know rotation orders can be very tricky if you haven't played around with them or don't really understand them, but I would recommend just taking some time to learn them. It can be very, very powerful, especially when you're animating different motions. It can be a very quick way to avoid gimbal lock and just animate much faster.